The storm hammered Station Kepler-7 with the fury of a dying star. Lightning cracked across the atmospheric dome, casting wild shadows through the observation deck where Commander Marcus Chen stood alone, watching the chaos unfold beyond the reinforced glass. The station groaned under the assault, its aging hull protesting against winds that could strip paint from metal. Marcus had grown accustomed to solitude. For 3 years, he had maintained this remote outpost at the edge of the hegemony's reach, monitoring deep space communications and filing reports that nobody read. The alien coalition that ruled most of the galaxy had little interest in humanity's opinions, but they tolerated his presence here as long as he remained invisible and caused no trouble. Tonight felt different. The storm seemed angrier, more personal. Weather control systems had failed 6 hours ago, leaving the station at the mercy of the planet's violent atmospheric tantrums. Emergency power flickered through the corridors, casting everything in an amber glow that reminded Marcus of dying embers. He was reaching for his coffee when the door chime sounded. Marcus froze. Nobody came to Kepler-7. The station's location was classified, buried so deep in bureaucratic files that even he sometimes forgot why he was here. Supply ships arrived monthly on scheduled runs, but the next delivery wasn't due for weeks. The chime sounded again, more insistent this time. Moving cautiously through the dim corridors, Marcus approached the main airlock. The external sensors showed a single figure huddled against the door, barely visible through sheets of rain that lashed the platform. Impossible. The nearest settlement was 200 kilometers away across treacherous terrain. No sane person would attempt that journey during a storm like this. The figure raised her head, and Marcus saw her face through the security monitor. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair plastered against pale skin. Her clothes were torn and soaked, and she was shivering violently. When she looked directly at the camera, her eyes held a desperation that cut through Marcus like a blade. She pressed her palm against the door and spoke, her voice barely audible over the storm's roar. "Please, I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet. Just let me in." Marcus hesitated. Protocol demanded that he verify her identity, contact hegemony authorities, and follow proper procedures for unauthorized visitors. But those same protocols had turned humanity into a scattered, broken species. They had cost him his family, his home, and nearly his sanity. Standing here in this forgotten corner of space, watching a desperate woman beg for shelter, Marcus felt something inside him shift. He opened the door. Water rushed in with her as she stumbled through the airlock, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. Marcus caught her before she could fall, feeling how light she was, how fragile. Her skin was ice cold, and she was trembling so hard she could barely stand. He guided her to a chair in the entry chamber, grabbing an emergency blanket from a nearby supply locker. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling the blanket around herself. "Thank you so much." "What's your name?" Marcus asked, studying her face more carefully now. There was something unusual about her features, something that didn't quite fit standard human genetics. Her eyes were too bright, too knowing, and when she moved, it was with a fluid grace that seemed almost unnatural. "Sarah," she said after a moment's hesitation. "Sarah Collins." "How did you get here, Sarah? And why?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, Marcus saw something in her expression that made his blood run cold. It wasn't fear. It was guilt. "I escaped," she said simply. "From the labor camps on Procyon 4. I've been running for weeks, hiding in cargo ships, stealing food, sleeping in maintenance shafts. When I heard about this place, about someone who might help, I had to try. I know you don't owe me anything. I know I'm putting you at risk just by being here. But I promise you I won't cause trouble. I can work. I can earn my keep." Marcus had heard whispers about Procyon 4. The hegemony ran forced labor operations there, using human workers to extract rare minerals from the planet's toxic surface. conditions were brutal, and few people ever left alive. If Sarah had truly escaped from there, she was either incredibly lucky or incredibly dangerous. "The hegemony will be looking for you," he said. "They think I'm dead. The transport I was on crashed during a prisoner transfer. Everyone else actually died, but I managed to crawl out of the wreckage. They never found my body, so they assumed I was vaporized in the explosion." Marcus watched her carefully, looking for signs of deception. But all he saw was exhaustion, hope, and a determination that reminded him of his younger self before the war had broken his spirit. "You can stay tonight," he decided, "until the storm passes. Then we'll figure out what comes next." Relief flooded Sarah's face, and for the first time since opening the door, Marcus saw her smile. It transformed her completely, revealing a warmth and intelligence that the desperation had hidden. In that moment, he realized he had just made a decision that would change everything. He didn't know how yet, but something told him that this quiet young woman had brought more than just herself to his door. She had brought possibility. Marcus woke to the smell of real food. For a moment, he lay in his narrow bunk wondering if he was dreaming. The standard protein bars and synthesized meals that comprised his usual diet had no aroma worth mentioning. But this was different, rich, complex, and absolutely real. His stomach growled in response, a sound he hadn't heard in months. He dressed quickly and made his way to the common area, following the scent like a homing beacon. The storm had passed during the night, leaving only gentle rain pattering against the observation windows. Emergency lighting had been replaced by warm illumination from the main power grid, which Sarah had somehow managed to restore. She stood at the compact kitchen unit with her back to him, moving with practiced efficiency as she tended something on the heating element. She had found clean clothes somewhere, probably from the emergency supply lockers, and her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. In the morning light, she looked less mysterious and more human, though Marcus still couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. "Good morning," she said without turning around. "I hope you don't mind. I found some preserved vegetables in storage and managed to create something edible. The protein synthesizer was offline, but I got it working again." Marcus stared at the display screen she had opened beside the kitchen unit. Diagnostic readouts scrolled past in complex patterns, showing system efficiency rates that were impossible. The protein synthesizer had been operating at 60% capacity for months, a chronic problem that the automated repair systems couldn't resolve. Now it was running at 112% efficiency. "How did you do that?" he asked. Sarah glanced at the screen, then quickly closed it. "I have some technical training from before the camps. I worked in food service management on a commercial station." The explanation sounded reasonable, but Marcus had been a military engineer before his exile to Kepler-7. He recognized advanced system optimization when he saw it, and what Sarah had accomplished would have taken a team of specialists several days to achieve. She had done it in a few hours while he slept. She served him a plate of what appeared to be scrambled eggs with vegetables and herbs. He took a cautious bite and immediately understood why his body had reacted so strongly to the aroma. It was perfect, not just edible, but genuinely delicious. The flavors were balanced and complex, far beyond anything the station's limited ingredients should have been able to produce. "This is incredible," he said, taking another bite. "I haven't eaten anything this good since I left Earth." Sarah smiled, but he noticed she barely touched her own food. Instead, she watched him eat with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. It wasn't the look of someone seeking approval, it was the look of someone taking measurements. "Tell me about yourself, Marcus," she said. "How did you end up here?" The question caught him off guard. He had grown so accustomed to isolation that normal conversation felt foreign. "I was a systems engineer in the Colonial Defense Force. During the hegemony expansion, I was stationed on Titan Base when they demanded our surrender. Command ordered us to fight, but it was hopeless. We were outnumbered 50-1. Marcus paused, remembering. I tried to convince my commanding officer to negotiate. The hegemony wasn't completely unreasonable in those days. They offered terms for cooperation. But Admiral Morrison refused to consider surrender. He said humans don't bow to aliens, no matter the odds. What happened? Titan Base was destroyed. 15,000 people died in the bombardment, including my wife Alina. She was a communications officer. Marcus set down his fork, his appetite suddenly gone. After the war ended, the hegemony reviewed military records. They marked me as a potential collaborator because of my stance on negotiation. I was given a choice: accept exile to a monitoring station or face execution for treason. Sarah leaned forward, her expression intense. Do you regret it? Trying to save lives instead of fighting a hopeless battle. Every day, Marcus said honestly. But not for the reasons you might think. I regret that I wasn't persuasive enough. I regret that pride mattered more than survival to people who should have known better. I regret that humanity's stubborn refusal to compromise left us scattered across the galaxy as second-class citizens. What if I told you that stubbornness might be humanity's greatest strength? Marcus looked at her sharply. There was something in her tone that suggested this wasn't a hypothetical question. What do you mean? Sarah stood and walked to the observation window, gazing out at the planet's surface. The storm had revealed new geological formations in the distance, crystalline structures that glittered in the morning sunlight like frozen fire. The hegemony has conquered 47 species in the past 3 centuries, she said. Some fought briefly and then submitted. Others negotiated terms and integrated peacefully into the coalition. A few species chose extinction rather than subjugation. But humans are different. You're the only species that has continued to resist after defeat. Resist. Marcus laughed bitterly. We're scattered across 1,000 worlds, working in labor camps and service jobs. That's not resistance, that's survival. Is it? Sarah turned back to him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. What do you know about the hegemony's recent territorial losses? Nothing. They don't share strategic information with monitoring station commanders. 3 months ago, the mining operation on Kepler 9 suffered a catastrophic system failure. All equipment was destroyed, and the entire facility had to be abandoned. Official reports blamed a reactor malfunction, but the real cause was sabotage. Someone had reprogrammed the mining robots to turn their cutting tools on the installation itself. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. How do you know that? 2 weeks later, a transport convoy disappeared between the Vega system and the Protean colonies. 6 ships carrying rare Earth elements simply vanished from sensor scans. The hegemony found them a week later, drifting empty in deep space. The cargo was gone, and the crews had been sedated and placed in escape pods with enough supplies to reach the nearest inhabited system. Sarah, how do you know these things? She ignored his question and continued. Last month, the communication array on Centauri Station was hacked. For 6 hours, every official hegemony channel broadcast the same message across 17 systems. It was a recording of Admiral Morrison's final transmission from Titan Base, the one where he said humans don't bow to aliens. Marcus stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. That's impossible. Morrison's message was classified at the highest levels. The hegemony buried every record of it. Someone found it anyway. Someone with access to systems that shouldn't exist and skills that shouldn't be possible. Sarah walked back to him, moving with that same fluid grace he had noticed the night before. The hegemony is terrified, Marcus. For the first time since their expansion began, they're facing an enemy they can't identify or predict. An enemy that strikes without warning and disappears without a trace. What are you saying? I'm saying that humanity's greatest strength isn't stubbornness. It's adaptability. You learn. You grow. You find ways to turn weakness into advantage. Sarah reached out and touched his hand, and Marcus felt a slight electrical tingle at the contact. The hegemony conquered you with superior numbers and technology, so you learned to work in small groups and improvise with limited resources. They scattered you across the galaxy to prevent organized resistance, so you learned to coordinate across vast distances. They put you in labor camps and service positions, so you learned their systems from the inside. Marcus stared at her, understanding beginning to dawn. You're not just a refugee, are you? Sarah smiled, and for the first time since she had arrived, it looked completely genuine. I told you I could cook, clean, and be quiet. I never said that was all I could do. Who are you really? I'm exactly who I said I am. Sarah Collins, escaped prisoner from Prostion 4. But I'm also something the hegemony never expected. She squeezed his hand gently. I'm what humanity becomes when it stops accepting limitations. The communication panel erupted in a cacophony of alerts at exactly 1400 hours. Marcus had been reviewing supply manifests when the urgent priority signal cut through the station's routine background hum like a blade through silk. Red warning lights bathed the command center in crimson as automated systems scrambled to decode the incoming transmission. Sarah appeared beside him before he could call for her, moving with that uncanny speed she had displayed earlier. She had spent the morning working throughout the station, performing maintenance tasks that should have taken days, but somehow required only minutes under her touch. Every system she encountered seemed to respond to her presence, operating more efficiently than their original specifications had ever promised. Hegemony Patrol, Marcus said, reading the identification codes streaming across his display. Heavy Cruiser Dominance, requesting immediate communication with Station Commander. Sarah's expression hardened. How long since your last official contact? 6 weeks. They're not scheduled for another inspection until next month. Marcus hesitated, his finger hovering over the response key. If I don't answer, they'll assume something's wrong and investigate directly. And if you do answer, they might detect that I'm not alone here. The communication request chimed again, more insistently. Marcus could picture the alien crew aboard the massive warship, their multifaceted eyes analyzing every detail of the station's energy signature, looking for anomalies that might indicate non-compliance with hegemony regulations. Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder, and Marcus felt that same electrical tingle he had experienced earlier. But this time, it was stronger, more purposeful. Information flowed into his mind, not words or images, but pure understanding. He saw the patrol ship's crew complement, their current mission parameters, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Answer them, Sarah said softly. But let me handle the technical aspects. Marcus opened the channel. The main display filled with the image of a hegemony naval officer, a Krillian, with the characteristic blue-scaled skin and predatory features that had once terrorized human colonies during the expansion wars. Commander Thex regarded Marcus with barely concealed contempt, his vertical pupils dilating as he spoke. Station Commander Chen. We are conducting routine security sweeps in this sector following reports of unauthorized vessel movements. Prepare for immediate inspection. Of course, Commander Thex, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. Though I should mention we've had some technical difficulties recently. The storm yesterday caused damage to several non-essential systems. Sarah moved behind the communication console, her fingers dancing across controls that Marcus couldn't even see. The station's background systems shifted subtly, masking energy signatures and creating false data streams that would satisfy a hegemony's sensors. Our scans indicate your power grid is operating at optimal efficiency, Thex said, his tone suspicious. There are no signs of damage. The repairs were completed this morning, Marcus explained. I was fortunate to have the right replacement parts in storage. It was technically true, though Marcus knew that Sarah's improvements went far beyond simple repairs. She had somehow enhanced every system she touched, creating efficiency levels that defied conventional engineering principles. The question was how the Hegemony Patrol would interpret such improvements. Thex studied his own displays for several long moments. Marcus could see confusion flickering across the alien commander's features as his sensors reported readings that didn't match his expectations. The station appeared to be operating normally, but with performance characteristics that exceeded baseline parameters. Commander Chen, our records indicate you are stationed alone on Kepler 7. Is this correct? Yes, sir. Standard monitoring protocol for Class C observation posts. Then explain why our bioscanners are detecting elevated metabolic activity throughout the station. Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead. Advanced hegemony sensors could detect minute changes in atmospheric composition, heat distribution, and even the subtle electromagnetic signatures of neural activity. There was no way to hide Sarah's presence from such sophisticated equipment. Unless Sarah had already thought of that. She touched the communication console again, and Marcus watched in amazement as the station's environmental data streams shifted. The biosignatures that had betrayed her presence began to fade, replaced by readings that suggested only a single occupant. It was impossible. She was somehow masking her own biological processes in real time. I've been working extended shifts to complete maintenance tasks before the next inspection, Marcus said. Elevated activity levels are normal under such circumstances. Thex's expression remained skeptical, but his sensor displays now supported Marcus's explanation. After another moment of scrutiny, the Krillian officer nodded curtly. Very well. Continue your duties, Commander Chen. We expect your next status report to be filed on schedule. The communication ended, leaving Marcus and Sarah alone in the sudden silence of the command center. Marcus turned to face her, questions burning in his throat, but Sarah was already moving toward the exit. We don't have much time, she said. That patrol ship will file a report about the anomalous readings, even if they couldn't identify the cause. Within hours, every hegemony intelligence agency will be analyzing the data, looking for patterns. How did you do that? How did you mask your biosignature? Sarah paused at the doorway, her back still turned to him. The human body generates bioelectrical fields through neural activity, cardiac function, and cellular metabolism. If you understand the principles involved, it's possible to create interference patterns that confuse sensor arrays. That's not an answer. That's theoretical physics. Yes, it is. She looked back at him, and Marcus saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten. It was sadness, deep and profound, tinged with a loneliness that matched his own. I'm sorry, Marcus. I know you have questions, and you deserve answers. But first, I need to show you something. She led him through the station's corridors to a maintenance access point he had never paid much attention to. Sarah pressed her palm against the security scanner, and to Marcus's amazement, the sealed hatch opened immediately. The passage beyond should have led to a dead-end utility compartment. But instead, Marcus found himself looking at a fully operational workshop that definitely hadn't existed yesterday. Equipment filled the space, devices he didn't recognize, displaying data streams in languages he couldn't read. Holographic displays showed star charts of the local sector, with hundreds of red markers indicating positions throughout hegemony space. Other screens tracked communication intercepts, shipping manifests, and what appeared to be personnel records for alien military commanders. This is impossible, Marcus whispered. I know every inch of this station. This room doesn't exist. It didn't, until I needed it to exist. Sarah moved to one of the central displays, her fingers manipulating controls that responded to her touch like living things. The space was here, Marcus. Unused volume between the outer hull and the inner compartments. I simply gave it purpose. In one night? In 1 hour, while you slept. She turned to face him, and Marcus saw that her eyes had changed. They were brighter now, with an inner light that seemed almost electronic. I told you I was what humanity becomes when it stops accepting limitations. Did you think I was speaking metaphorically? Marcus stared at the impossible room, at the technology that shouldn't exist, at the woman who claimed to be human, but clearly was something more. "What are you, Sarah?" "I'm the answer to a question nobody thought to ask," she said. "What happens when you take human adaptability, human ingenuity, and human stubbornness and give them the tools to exceed every limitation that biology, physics, and society try to impose?" She gestured to the displays around them, showing the secret network of resistance that had been growing throughout hegemony space. "I'm not alone, Marcus. There are hundreds of us now, maybe thousands. We call ourselves the Evolved. We're still human, but we're human plus something more. We're what our species becomes when it refuses to accept that defeat is permanent." Marcus felt the universe shifting around him, reality rewriting itself to accommodate truths he had never imagined. How is this possible? "The same way everything else becomes possible," Sarah said softly. "Someone decides that impossible is just another word for untried, and then they try anyway." She touched a control, and the displays shifted to show real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Human workers in alien factories, moving with perfect coordination to sabotage production lines. Human servants in hegemony government buildings, accessing classified systems with abilities that shouldn't exist. Human refugees on 1,000 worlds, quietly building a network that spanned the stars. "We are the children of Titan Base," Sarah said. "We are the legacy of Admiral Morrison's refusal to surrender. We are what happens when humanity stops asking for permission to be free." "We are the children of Titan Base," Sarah said. "We are the legacy of Admiral Morrison's refusal to surrender. We are what happens when humanity stops asking for permission to be free." The revelation should have terrified Marcus. Instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Standing in the impossible workshop that Sarah had somehow created from empty space, surrounded by technology that defied every law of physics he understood, Marcus finally saw a future where humanity might be more than scattered refugees clinging to survival. "Show me," he said. Sarah smiled, the first truly joyful expression he had seen from her. She moved to the central control array, her enhanced abilities interfacing directly with systems that seemed to respond to her thoughts as much as her touch. The holographic displays shifted, revealing the true scope of what the Evolved had accomplished. "It began 5 years after the hegemony occupation," she explained. "A geneticist named Dr. Elena Vasquez was working in a labor camp on Rigel 7, forced to develop biological weapons for her captors. Instead, she discovered something else: a way to unlock dormant potential in human DNA. The display showed a complex molecular structure, strands of genetic code that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Marcus recognized some of the base sequences, but others were completely alien to him. The hegemony never understood what makes humanity unique," Sarah continued. "They saw our technology, our military capabilities, our political structures, and they judged us based on those surface characteristics. But humanity's real strength has always been neuroplasticity, our ability to adapt, learn, and evolve in response to changing circumstances." "Neuroplasticity is limited," Marcus objected. "The human brain can only process so much information, make so many connections." "The natural human brain, yes, but what if those limitations aren't fundamental? What if they're just a starting point?" Sarah touched another control, and the display zoomed in on specific gene sequences. Dr. Vasquez discovered that human DNA contains dormant coding sequences, evolutionary backup plans that activate under extreme stress. The hegemony's oppression provided that stress. Marcus studied the genetic data, trying to understand the implications. "You're talking about directed evolution, conscious modification of human genetics." "Not modification, activation. The potential was always there, buried in our genetic code like sleeping giants. We just learned how to wake them up." Sarah's eyes brightened as she spoke, and Marcus realized he was seeing the process in action. Enhanced neural processing capacity, improved cellular regeneration, direct interface capabilities with electronic systems, perfect memory retention, accelerated learning and problem-solving abilities. And the price? Sarah's expression grew somber. The transformation is irreversible. Once you begin the process, you can never go back to being baseline human. Many people can't handle what they become, the constant flow of information, the awareness of possibilities they never imagined. Some go insane. Others simply burn out. Marcus looked at her more carefully, seeing details he had missed before. The slight luminescence in her eyes. The way her movements seemed perfectly calculated, as if she could predict the exact position of every object around her. The aura of barely contained energy that surrounded her like a force field. How long do you have? We don't know. The oldest of us has been active for 18 months. She's showing no signs of degradation, but the long-term effects are still unknown. Sarah turned away from the displays, and Marcus saw vulnerability in her posture that contradicted her enhanced abilities. It might be years. It might be decades. It might be forever. And you chose this anyway. I chose freedom, Marcus, not just for myself, but for every human being who ever dreamed of something better than permanent subjugation. She gestured to the star charts showing resistance operations across the galaxy. We are fighting a war that the hegemony doesn't even realize has begun. Every day, we grow stronger, smarter, and more capable. Every day, we prove that humanity refuses to accept defeat. The communication panel chimed with an incoming priority message. Marcus moved to answer it, but Sarah held up a hand to stop him. It's from the patrol ship, she said, somehow reading the signal before it fully decoded. Commander Thex is requesting additional data about station operations. He's suspicious about the sensor readings. What do? We give him what he wants, and so much more. Sarah's smile turned predatory. Marcus, how would you like to see what happens when an Evolve decides to stop hiding? Before he could respond, Sarah placed both hands on the communication console. The station's entire network lit up like a constellation, processing power increasing exponentially as she merged her consciousness with the electronic systems. Every sensor, every data stream, every communication relay became an extension of her awareness. The response she sent to Commander Thex wasn't just a message. It was a virus, a self-replicating program that spread through the patrol ship systems like wildfire. Marcus watched in amazement as Sarah took control of every electronic device aboard the hegemony vessel, from the main computers to the coffee makers in the crew quarters. This is impossible, Marcus breathed. Their security systems were designed to stop conventional attacks from conventional minds, Sarah replied, her voice echoing with electronic harmonics as she spoke through both her physical vocal cords and the station's communication system. They never imagined facing an intelligence that could think in quantum superposition states and processed parallel data streams simultaneously. On the main display, Marcus could see inside the patrol ship. Krillian crew members were staring at their control panels in confusion as every system began operating according to Sarah's will rather than their commands. The ship's weapons powered down. Navigation systems locked onto a course toward the edge of the system. Communication arrays began broadcasting a continuous loop of Admiral Morrison's final message from Titan Base. You're taking control of a hegemony warship, Marcus said, his voice filled with awe and terror. I'm demonstrating what humanity can accomplish when it stops accepting limitations, Sarah corrected. This patrol ship will return to hegemony space carrying more than just a standard report. It will carry a message that will spread through their networks like a plague. What message? Sarah turned to look at him, and Marcus saw the future reflected in her glowing eyes. It was a future where humans didn't beg for scraps at alien tables, where the scattered children of Earth stood as equals to any species in the galaxy, where the word impossible held no power over human ambition. That we are coming, she said simply, and that they should have killed us all when they had the chance. The patrol ship's engines fired automatically, carrying Commander Thex and his crew toward their home base with a cargo of digital rebellion that would soon spread across the galaxy like a virus designed to wake sleeping giants. The transformation began 36 hours after the patrol ship departed. Marcus felt it first as a tingling sensation in his fingertips, similar to the electrical contact he had experienced when Sarah touched him, but stronger and more pervasive. He was reviewing the morning surveillance data when the station's main computer began responding to commands he hadn't given. "Sarah," he called, but she was already there, materializing beside him with that uncanny speed that had become familiar. "It's starting," she said, studying his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "The nanobiological agents I introduced to your system are beginning to integrate with your neural pathways." Marcus stared at her. "You infected me?" "I enhanced you. The process was already underway. It began the moment you opened the door to let me inside. Every breath you've taken, every meal you've eaten, every surface you've touched has been introducing the necessary biological catalysts into your system." Sarah's expression was apologetic but determined. "I couldn't ask your permission, Marcus. If you had refused, you would have been the only baseline human aware of our existence. That would have made you either an asset or a liability." The tingling sensation spread up his arms, and Marcus watched in fascination as his vision sharpened. Details that had been invisible moments before became crystal clear. He could see individual dust particles floating in the recycled air, could hear the subtle variations in the station's electrical systems that indicated minor fluctuations in power distribution, could smell trace chemical signatures that told him exactly what Sarah had eaten for breakfast. "The fear is normal," she said, watching his face. "Your brain is processing information at rates it was never designed to handle. The sensation of enhancement can be overwhelming at first." Marcus tried to stand, but his enhanced nervous system sent conflicting signals to his muscles. He stumbled, catching himself against the control console, and felt the station's entire network suddenly open to his awareness. Data streams that had been invisible background processes now flowed through his consciousness like rivers of pure information. "How do you control it?" he gasped. "You don't control it. You learn to dance with it. The enhancement isn't something that happens to you, Marcus. It's something you become." Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder, and through the contact, Marcus felt her consciousness brush against his own. "Let me show you." The experience was indescribable. Through Sarah's enhanced senses, Marcus perceived the universe as it truly was, not the limited, filtered reality that baseline humans experienced, but an infinite cascade of interconnected systems, energy flows, and information networks. He could feel the gravitational interactions between distant stars, could trace the path of individual photons as they traveled through space, could perceive the quantum fluctuations that governed reality at its most fundamental level. "This is what the hegemony fears," Sarah whispered, her voice echoing through both audible sound waves and direct neural transmission. "Not human weapons or human politics or human technology. They fear human potential. They fear what we become when we stop accepting that there are things we cannot do." Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, connecting to networks he had never known existed. Through the station's communication array, enhanced by Sarah's modifications, he could sense other evolved humans scattered across the galaxy. Their minds were like stars in a constellation of rebellion, each one burning with the same fierce determination that had driven Admiral Morrison to choose death over surrender. "There are so many of us," he marveled. "And more every day. The viral program I sent with the patrol ship contained the genetic activation codes. Every human who comes into contact with those signals will begin the transformation process, whether they realize it or not." Sarah's smile was radiant with possibility. The hegemony wanted to scatter humanity across the galaxy to prevent organized resistance. Instead, they gave us the greatest distribution network in history. The communication panel erupted with incoming signals, dozens of them, then hundreds, then thousands. Enhanced humans across the galaxy were awakening to their new capabilities and reaching out to connect with others like themselves. Marcus could feel the network growing in real time, synapses of consciousness linking across impossible distances to form a collective intelligence that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Marcus, Sarah said urgently, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. The name hit him like a physical blow. Earth, humanity's cradle world, the planet that had been sealed off from all contact since the hegemony occupation. For 30 years, no human had known what had happened to the 8 billion people who had remained behind when the colonies fell. The transmission resolved into a holographic image of a woman Marcus didn't recognize. She appeared to be in her 50s, with graying hair and the kind of deep-set exhaustion that came from carrying impossible burdens for too long. But her eyes burned with the same inner fire that marked all of the evolved. "My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez," she said, and Marcus felt Sarah tense beside him. "I am transmitting from the ruins of Geneva, Switzerland, on Earth. If you are receiving this message, it means the activation signal has successfully propagated throughout the hegemony's communication networks." The image shifted to show the devastation behind her, collapsed buildings, twisted metal, and the unmistakable scars of orbital bombardment. But among the ruins, Marcus could see movement. Humans, thousands of them, working with impossible coordination to rebuild their shattered world. 30 years ago, the hegemony believed they had broken humanity's spirit, Dr. Vasquez continued. They isolated Earth, destroyed our governments, and left us to starve in the ruins of our civilization. What they didn't realize was that they had given us the greatest gift possible: freedom from the limitations we had imposed on ourselves. The scene changed again, revealing workshops and laboratories hidden beneath the rubble. Enhanced humans worked alongside technology that seemed to merge organic and electronic components seamlessly. Gardens of impossible plants grew in environments that should have been sterile. Children played games that involved manipulating gravitational fields with their bare hands. "We have spent 3 decades preparing for this moment," Dr. Vasquez said. "Every enhanced human throughout the galaxy carries within their genetic code the keys to technologies that will revolutionize civilization. Faster-than-light communication without relays. Energy generation through quantum manipulation. Matter transmutation at the molecular level. Consciousness transfer across any distance." Marcus felt his enhanced mind reeling as the implications hit him. "They're talking about godlike abilities." "No," Sarah said quietly. "They're talking about human abilities that have always existed in potential. We just never had the courage to claim them." Dr. Vasquez's image smiled, and Marcus saw in her expression the same mixture of hope and determination that had driven humanity to reach for the stars in the first place. "The hegemony called us a defeated species," she said. "They labeled us as inferior beings fit only for servitude. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when humanity stops asking permission to be extraordinary." The transmission ended, but the signal it had carried continued to propagate. Marcus could feel it spreading through subspace, reaching every corner of hegemony territory, activating dormant genetic sequences in millions of humans who had never imagined they could be anything more than what biology and circumstance had made them. "It's beautiful," he whispered, watching the network of enhanced consciousness expand across the galaxy like a flower blooming in fast forward. "It's just the beginning," Sarah replied. "Marcus, I need to ask something of you. The next phase of our evolution requires someone to coordinate the integration of all enhanced humans into a single collective consciousness. Someone with the technical knowledge to manage the networking protocols and the moral authority to make decisions that will affect our entire species." Marcus looked at her, understanding what she was asking. "You want me to become the central node. I'd want you to become what Admiral Morrison would have been if he had lived to see this day. I want you to be the voice that speaks for all of humanity when we finally stand as equals among the stars." Through his enhanced senses, Marcus could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "Accept and he would become something that transcended individual existence, a focal point for the consciousness of millions of enhanced humans, carrying their hopes and fears and dreams as his own. Refuse, and humanity's greatest opportunity might slip away in chaos and confusion. He thought of Elena, his wife, who had died defending a hopeless position because surrender was unthinkable. He thought of the billions of humans scattered across the galaxy, working in silence and shadow, waiting for someone to tell them it was time to stand up and be counted. He thought of the door he had opened in the storm, and the quiet woman who had whispered that she could cook and clean and be quiet, never mentioning that she could also rewrite the fundamental nature of reality. "I accept," Marcus said. Sarah smiled, and Marcus felt the collective consciousness of enhanced humanity flowing into him like a river of stars. He was no longer just Marcus Chen, failed engineer and exile. He was the voice of a species that had finally learned to dream without limits. Then let's show the galaxy what humans can do when they stop being quiet. The hegemony's response came within 72 hours, exactly as Sarah had predicted. Every available warship in the local sector converged on Kepler-7, their commanders believing they were dealing with a localized security breach that could be contained through conventional military action. They arrived to find a space station that should not have existed. Marcus stood in what had been the observation deck, though the familiar walls and windows had been replaced by something that defied easy description. The enhanced humans throughout the galaxy had worked in perfect coordination to transform the modest monitoring post into humanity's first true embassy to the stars. A structure that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that conventional physics insisted were impossible. Through his connection to the collective consciousness, Marcus could perceive the approaching fleet through 1,000 different perspectives. Enhanced humans aboard those very ships were recording every detail of their commanders' reactions, feeding information back to the network in real time. The hegemony's greatest strength, their vast military superiority, had become their greatest vulnerability now that every human in their service had access to abilities their masters couldn't comprehend. 18 heavy cruisers, 47 destroyers, and 1 dreadnought-class battleship, Sarah reported, though Marcus already knew the details through their shared awareness. Fleet Admiral Cathvar himself is commanding from the flagship Inevitable Dominion. He brought the entire 7th Fleet to deal with 1 refugee and a monitoring station commander, Marcus observed. Either we've impressed them or terrified them. Both, I think. Sarah's physical form stood beside him, but Marcus could feel her consciousness distributed across dozens of locations throughout the galaxy, coordinating operations that would have been impossible for baseline humans to imagine. They're beginning to understand that this isn't a rebellion they can crush with superior firepower. The lead cruiser opened a communication channel, and Marcus found himself face to face with Fleet Admiral Cathvar, a hegemony commander whose reputation for ruthless efficiency had made him a legend throughout the occupied territories. The alien's predatory features were composed in an expression of controlled fury that barely concealed deeper currents of fear. "Commander Chen," the admiral said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You will surrender yourself immediately for questioning regarding violations of colonial occupation protocols. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your facility and the sterilization of this system." Marcus smiled, feeling the collective confidence of millions of enhanced humans flowing through him. "Admiral, I appreciate the dramatic entrance, but I'm afraid I'm no longer just Commander Chen. Allow me to introduce myself properly." He opened his awareness fully, letting his enhanced consciousness interface directly with the fleet's communication systems. Every screen aboard every ship in the Armada suddenly displayed the same image, Marcus, but transformed. His eyes held the light of stars, his voice carried harmonics that resonated through both audible frequencies and quantum fluctuations, and behind him, the impossible architecture of the transformed station stretched into dimensions that hurt to perceive directly. "I am Marcus Chen, first speaker for the Enhanced Human Collective. I speak with the voice of 12 million humans who have transcended the limitations that once defined our species. We are no longer the scattered refugees you crushed 30 years ago. We are something new, something you never anticipated, and something you cannot defeat through conventional warfare. The silence that followed was profound. Marcus could feel the shock rippling through the fleet as alien commanders struggled to process what they were seeing. Many of them had been present during the original conquest of human space, when superior numbers and technology had made victory seem inevitable. They had never imagined facing an enemy that could rewrite the rules of engagement in real time. Admiral Kethvar recovered first, his military training overriding his initial confusion. You are still human, Chen. Enhanced or not, you remain a conquered species. Surrender now, and your death will be swift. Admiral. Marcus replied gently, you misunderstand the situation. We are not surrendering. We are offering you terms. The holographic displays throughout the fleet shifted to show scenes from across the galaxy. Enhanced humans were emerging from hiding on 1,000 worlds, their abilities allowing them to accomplish in minutes what had previously taken years. Industrial facilities that had operated at minimal efficiency for decades suddenly achieved productivity levels that exceeded their theoretical maximums. Transportation networks that had struggled with chronic delays began moving goods and people with perfect synchronization. Agricultural centers that had barely produced subsistence crops started yielding harvests that could feed entire star systems. This is what 12 million enhanced humans can accomplish in 72 hours, Marcus explained. We have not destroyed your infrastructure, Admiral. We have made it better. Every system we touch becomes more efficient, more productive, more capable than it was before. We offer the hegemony partnership, not conquest. Admiral Kethvar's expression shifted from fury to calculation. Marcus could see the alien commander's mind working, weighing the military implications of what he was witnessing. The enhanced humans weren't attacking hegemony positions. They were improving them, making them more valuable while simultaneously demonstrating their complete control over systems that should have been secure. You speak of partnership, the Admiral said carefully. What terms do you propose? Simple, Marcus replied. Humanity takes its place as an equal member of the galactic community. Our colonies are granted full autonomy. Our people are free to travel, trade, and settle where they choose. In return, we share our enhanced capabilities with all member species of the hegemony. And if we refuse? Marcus's smile became predatory. Then we stop being quiet. The demonstration that followed lasted exactly 60 seconds. Every enhanced human in the galaxy acted simultaneously, their combined consciousness coordinating actions across impossible distances with perfect precision. Hegemony military bases found their defense systems shut down and replaced with more advanced versions. Government facilities discovered that their most classified files had been reorganized and improved. Commercial centers watched their profit margins increase exponentially as enhanced humans optimized their operations. But the most significant change occurred aboard the fleet itself. Every human crew member, and there were thousands of them, serving in menial positions throughout the Armada, suddenly manifested enhanced abilities. They didn't attack their alien commanders or sabotage their ships. Instead, they began performing their duties with capabilities that made the vessels operate like dreams of what starships could be. This is what happens when humanity stops accepting limitations, Marcus said as the demonstration concluded. We don't destroy your civilization, Admiral. We make it magnificent, but we do so as equals, not as servants. Admiral Kethvar stared at his own control displays, which were now showing system efficiency readings that defied every law of engineering he understood. Around him, human crew members continued their duties with serene competence that made his most advanced equipment seem primitive by comparison. The Hegemony Council will never accept these terms, he said finally. The Hegemony Council will accept whatever terms allow them to survive what comes next. Sarah interjected, her image appearing beside Marcus on every screen in the fleet. Admiral, you represent the old way of thinking, the belief that power comes from conquest and domination. We represent something new. Power through elevation, strength through cooperation, victory through making everyone better than they were before. Marcus felt the collective consciousness of enhanced humanity flowing through him, carrying the hopes and dreams of billions who had waited 30 years for this moment. Admiral, your fleet can open fire and destroy this station. You might even succeed, though I doubt it. But you cannot destroy an idea whose time has come. You cannot kill a revolution that makes everyone it touches more than they ever imagined they could be. The communication channel remained open for several long minutes as Admiral Kethvar conferred with his staff and presumably with Hegemony High Command. Marcus could feel the debate raging across their networks. Fear of human capabilities balanced against the undeniable benefits that enhanced humans were already providing. When the Admiral returned, his expression had changed. The fury was gone, replaced by the careful neutrality of a professional soldier recognizing a new reality. The Hegemony Council has agreed to preliminary negotiations, he announced. You will be granted provisional recognition as an autonomous collective, pending the outcome of formal discussions. Marcus nodded graciously. Thank you, Admiral. I think you'll find that humanity makes much better partners than we ever did servants. As the fleet began to withdraw, Marcus felt Sarah's hand slip into his. Around them, the impossible architecture of their transformed station hummed with the energy of 12 million enhanced humans working toward a future where the word impossible held no power over human ambition. So, Sarah said quietly, "What do we do now that we've won?" Marcus looked out at the stars, no longer distant points of light, but destinations waiting to be explored by a species that had finally learned to dream without limits. Now we show the galaxy what happens when humans stop being quiet and start being extraordinary. Hashtag, I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet, she whispered. He opened his door, and suddenly, his life HFY